Hello, happy Sunday. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Happy Sunday. I hope you guys are staying cool and hydrated because it is hot outside. Thank you for joining me on a Sunday. I know it's a departure from our Saturday meetings, but my day is going well. I'm just getting started. This is my first thing of the day. After this, I'm going to go to brunch. So thank you for asking. How is your day going? I've pinned down there at the bottom what this event is, and if you don't have a copy of the book, where you can get a copy to support Diverse Spines. I'm so excited. Hey, Celeste, how are you, girl? So excited to talk to Morgan again. This book, Zeal, is absolutely amazing. I already know that it's going to be one of my favorite of the year. Definitely, without a doubt. We will do no spoilers. But this is book club, and this is a book that I really, really want to talk about. But we won't do any spoilers for some of you all that have not read the book. This is the first book in our summer reading series. And I think this is our 7th year doing this summer reading series. So thank you guys for joining along. And this by far has probably been my favorite lineup because we have When Sleeping Women Wake next month, and then August Lane in August. Morgan is here. I don't know why Instagram always plays games with me, but let me accept that. My phone is following out.
Hello.
Hey, how are
I'm good.
you?
How are
I'm
you doing?
doing good. Is it hot enough for you?
It's hot. Like I'm trying to keep cool right now. So
It frustrates you when it's hot.
yeah, but I'm good. I'm inside. I have AC, thankfully.
Thank goodness. My daughter was just saying she lives in London. She was like, I don't know how they do it without any AC over here.
I literally just returned from Germany Friday night, and there was no AC. And at a certain point, you just gotta be like, I have to be accept the sweat. I have my deodorant in my bag. I have my
Yes,
baby powder. I don't really know what else I could do. Like,
there's nothing else.
Mhm.
And I told my mom, I said, it doesn't line up with menopause because it is a struggle. You're like the natural heat that I'm getting, and then the heat outside, it doesn't go together by
When you
nature.
observe menopause from the other side of someone going through it, and it's like it's not just hot, it's like I've seen a loved one like lose their train of thought, like they had
It's
to take 5 like just to recollect and get back to whatever was going on.
it is a thing that we don't talk about enough. It is a thing.
I literally wrote on Blue Sky, I think a couple of weeks ago. I was like, I wish that there was a comedy series about a woman going through menopause. Like I
I'll
don't
be the first
understand
one to
why it
sign
hasn't
up.
happened yet.
It needs to be. But I want to thank you so much for agreeing to join me on Diverse Spines. We talked, I think, was it last month?
Yeah.
Last month on Spines and Vines. So I'm going to do a quick intro and
Okay.
then we're going to dive right in. We're not going to keep you long on this Sunday,
That's
but
okay.
I'm telling you, I have been a champion of this book since I listened to the audio back in March.
Thank you.
It is incredible.
Thank
Welcome you guys on a Sunday, a departure from our Saturday meetups, but happy to welcome Morgan Jerkins to Diverse Spines. This is our first book in our summer reading series, Zeal. Absolutely incredible. What can we say about Morgan? She is all the things. I mean, a New York Times bestselling author of This Will Be My Undoing, Call Baby, which I absolutely love,
you.
and then Wandering in Strange Lands. So now we're back with historical fiction with Zeal. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So let's jump right in and just give a brief description of what the book is about. And then I would love to know, the audience wants to know, what inspired you to write this story.
So the premise of Zeal is that there are two enslaved lovers get separated from their Mississippi plantation where they labored at the brink of the Civil War. And we follow the trajectories that their respective families take across the country, across the backdrop, against the backdrop of American history until we reach modern day Harlem in COVID era. and you have this couple, this engaged couple that's separated because of those circumstances. And it's through the grief that they eventually find their way back to each other and also understand the centuries long connections between their two families. I got this inspiration because I lived in Harlem in COVID era pandemic. I was there when Harlem, New York rather, was considered the epicenter of the virus. So every day it felt like we were being told by other news pundits that we were running out of beds.
Yes.
It was emergency. And so I remember, like, I had an apartment near Central Park, and as you can imagine, you might hear things, right? The sign of life at any
Mm-hmm.
hour. And I didn't hear even a dog bark. I remember the only sounds that I could hear was just ambulance sirens blaring as it moved through the avenues. And one day I was like, I want to write a love story, but I want to write a love story where I already know what the ending is going to be. And I didn't know that for any of my other books, and that was that we win in the end. And I knew that because I wanted to create an epic, I'd been used to reading epics from about people and from people that did not look like me.
Mm-hmm.
I knew I wanted to be expansive, and I was going to need help with the research for that, to help to categorize, or just to help get midwife it as I'm trying to figure out a way in which to inject my fiction into historical accuracy.
Mm-hmm.
And I met this woman at the Schomburg. Her name is Barry Brown, and I told her the premise of what I was thinking. It was still in its embryonic stages, and when I told her, she said, well, I have something I need to show you. She emailed me. This is before she even agreed to be my assistant. And it was a 4-page love letter addressed from an enslaved man named James Tate to his wife, Olivia. They were separated at the time of the letter, which was February 4th, 1863. And he wrote her a letter to an intermediary named Maria. And he said, my master wants me to forget about you, but I just want to let you know that I haven't. And I knew that I was like, that's it. Like, that there's a precedent for this. And I already know there was a precedent of people finding each other through advertisements, which is also used in the book, church bulletins to find people, which is also used in the book. I knew that was it, but it was something about that letter, and it was kept in such pristine condition. It was donated by a family that I was like, okay, I have something here. And the good news is that I never researched the family after that. I had a friend of mine, I think a month before my publication in late April, that asked me whatever happened to them. And I was so afraid to find
Mm-hmm.
out because, as you and I already know, there are so many archives that are burned,
Mm-hmm.
erased, omitted. And I found out that him and his wife did reunite for
Oh,
eternity. They are actually buried in the same Atlanta
oh
cemetery.
my
So it actually was a
goodness.
good
That was,
ending.
oh my goodness. I got goosebumps. Oh my goodness.
That's good, right?
Oh, wow. You mentioned the book it's an epic. It covers so much time in history.
Mhm.
How did you keep all the details and the family connection straight while writing?
I had to keep reminding myself that we as African Americans, things were not just done to us. We moved in these spaces. We walked down those streets. We were in those churches. We were at those juke joints. And history was happening to us all the time, even if we didn't know it at the
Right.
moment. And so I split it up in terms of just the time period. If I'm reading about what was social life like after the war was called
Mm-hmm.
and enslaved people were emancipated, I'm thinking to myself, how would that make someone feel as a human being? Maybe they
Yeah.
don't know what they are.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of confusion that's going on. And I am a history nerd.
Yeah.
I definitely made sure I read about each time period. What was it like in Nicodemus, Kansas, when the exodusters migrated to that town? What was it like in 1920 Chicago? Where would they have worked? What was happening to the economy? Where did they go to get food when the
Mm-hmm.
economy crashed? Where were the blues joints that were the clubs that were around that
Yeah.
this person may have sang in?
Mm-hmm.
And I think for me, it was taking it step by step, but also letting, emotions guide what's going on. Like, I cannot, there are certain things, unfortunately, as a writer, I'm never going to know. And I had to be okay with that because I was reading so much that I almost got myself stuck in a sense.
Yeah.
Like, I wanted to make sure that an historian didn't read my book and be like, oh, that's wrong, and I'm going to disregard the whole thing. That hasn't happened,
Right.
thankfully. But I had to have a lot of talks with my writer community of like, now it's time to write. And I knew it spiritually when it was time to write, but it was a thing of like, okay, if this is a Black woman, how would she navigate this? A Black woman is not going to walk around by herself in Natchez, Mississippi in Reconstruction era. It's not going
Right.
to happen. Like, who would be with her? What are the type of safety mechanisms that they would
Yeah.
use?
I mean, your research, the accuracy, and just how everything just kind of blended together is like
It was
incredible.
fun.
And,
It was fun, and also, like, sorry to cut you off.
no, no,
Like,
no.
I wanted this book to be an adventure, not only like in a literary sense, but in the physical sense.
Mm-hmm.
So many of those avenues and places that I listed, those are real.
Yeah.
Like they exist. I don't know if they exist now, but that moment when Ardelia goes to Chicago and she can't find the particular places because they don't exist anymore, that is a thing. I actually looked on Google Maps
Mm-hmm.
and looked up the addresses of these places, and I was like, you're seeing what she would have seen.
Yeah.
So someone can go to Shreveport and figure out where the bottoms were, where a lot of the African American community
Yeah.
congregated and settled. But that's a real roadmap that someone could take and say, I can go on a literary adventure just by using the corners of what she listed.
Yeah. Yes, you're so right about. I mean, I every time I think about this book, it was an adventure. I found myself taking so many notes and like just researching and just going, just going down the rabbit hole. That's, I think, to me is the sign of a good, I mean, an excellent
Thank you.
writer, especially when it comes to historical fiction. You gotta, it's fiction, but you also have some historical elements to it, which entice the reader.
Thank you. Well, it was hard. It was hard because I have never said this before, but one of my foibles as a writer is that I don't have the environmental language of someone that would have grown up in the Deep
Mm.
South. I was born and raised in New Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
I can probably describe to you what Atlantic City Boardwalk is like with the ocean nearby, but that's
Yeah.
it. And so when I was thinking about writing and having the story beginning in the blackest state in the country, I couldn't go down there and
Mm.
visit. I,
Right.
it was COVID era. I had to rely on maps. I had to rely on sketches. I had to rely on accounts of what it looked like. And it was difficult. Like, just the first 5 pages in the beginning,
Yeah.
in the first chapter of when Harrison returns and he's looking at these plantations and he's seeing how destroyed they are. That took so much time because
Mm-hmm.
my editor at the time was just telling me, you have to reorient the reader. And I wanted readers to, if they wanted to be able to smell Tears' cooking, to be able
Mm-hmm.
to understand like that humidity, to be able to hear the seagulls,
Yeah.
when people are setting up their shacks. I wanted them to be there. So the best way I could do it is like, whether you look left or right, you're gonna see something.
Yeah.
Like it's I wanted it to be as immersive as possible.
And why this time period? I mean, you're taking us out of, the Civil War's
Yeah,
ended, right?
yeah, because families were separated.
Yeah.
There's a moment that I haven't got the opportunity to talk about, and it is a moment where Harrison has a nightmare
Mm-hmm.
because he's thinking about a time where he was born and raised in Virginia, and his master told him that he would never be sold, and he did get
Yes.
sold. He was sold to slave traders that took him to Alexandria to go to the Deep South. And at the time, that was the second Middle Passage. And when you were sent to the Deep South in places like Mississippi or Louisiana, it was considered a death sentence.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got that small piece from Franklin Armfield. Franklin Armfield were two slave traders that separated more African Americans than African American families than any other slave trade in history.
Mm.
And in fact, one of their original properties, get this, is actually the site for Angola prison. So
Wow.
The reason why it's situated at 1865 is because so many families were splintered. You don't know where they ended up. So that's why I wanted to have it, because like, there's excitement of like, oh, I'm free. What does that mean? But also, where's my
Yes.
people? How do I start finding them? And I wanted to show that there was an infrastructure. There was the Freedmen's Bureau. There was the churches.
Yeah.
Even the rumors circulating the Jew joint about where people were, and that was all important.
I think that's a part that really, really like resonated with me, is that, you know, although people were separated, you know, people were looking for their people.
They
And,
never stopped.
you know, and then and to bring it forward, you know, here we are in 2025 and people's families are still being separated.
Yeah, it's like, I think what carried me throughout this book, even though it was difficult to write, is that I feel like in order for me to write about love in the way that I did, and sometimes I can look at sentences and just be enthralled, but that was able to come out of me. In order to be able to write like that, I first had to have love for myself. And
Yes.
as I was reading the history of African Americans across this country, and I was studying where they lived and how they migrated, it made me feel like I am, and any other African American is a walking miracle, because someone had to make a decision, almost a snap decision,
Yeah.
that may have changed the trajectory of your family's whole lineage for the rest for centuries. It just happened. That was a survival tactic, and I think that's what sort of carried this book as well.
Yeah. Let's talk about Harrison and Tears' love story, because I think, and someone said in the comments too, no matter how hard they tried, we still had community,
Yeah,
and that's beautiful. But the other things too, we also had love.
yeah,
You know, despite whatever was being done to us or happening to us,
yeah,
we had love. And so I
yeah,
think that's a lot of things that sometimes is not shown in stories, especially when you're dealing with slavery.
yeah,
And yeah, that,
yes,
and you did
and
that. I mean, it was so beautiful. So let's talk a
thank
little bit about their love story, how it feels. It feels very raw. It feels very real.
yeah, thank. I mean, I knew that it was time for me to write when I was literally sweeping my floor in my bathroom, and I saw this man, and he was riding gallantly through the fields of Mississippi, and the first line was, "She was gone."
Mm.
And that's when I knew. I was like, now it's time to write. Like that, once you have an image and a line ferments like that, it's like, for me, it's like, that's when it's time to write. And I think with Harrison and Tirza, it's interesting because Harrison, what I hope that people imagine, is a very handsome man.
Yes.
He works with his hands, and he works outside in this huge, stately plantation in Natchez, Mississippi. And Tirza works inside, which is a different kind of terror, because she's in proximity to her master and her master's
Yes.
son. And so one day she refused her master's son, Spencer, and he humiliates her basically. And the one person who first showed her kindness was Harrison. And there was something about that made her realize all of the intimacies that she may have observed in the house, that could happen to her too. And it did, for a split second.
Yeah.
And I think with Harrison and Tirza, like, he loved her because she filled his life with language, and language opened up a new world for him. She taught him how to spell her name. She taught him how to spell his
Yes.
own name. And they would meet secretly in meadows near groves and things of that nature. So when he left to go to the Civil War, because the Union Army was ransacking Natchez, a lot of slave owners like Spencer were fleeing.
Yes.
He wanted to leave, not because he wanted to abandon her, but he left because he thought that if he left and they won, it would create a future for them. Not realizing that when he came back for her, she had no choice but to flee, because her master's son was like, I'm going to hold on to my value, my property, by any means necessary. And in order to do that, I'm going to go even deeper into the South, into Shreveport, Louisiana, which is one of the last Confederate strongholds at that time. But that was it. It was just like, he promised her. He said, I'm going to come back for you.
And so we're moving into we're going to move into Tears' life. So we may have to share
Okay.
a small
Okay.
tweak,
That's
a
fine.
small spoiler, because
That's
this is a book
that's fine.
club. They should have read the book, but some people are just now getting it. They
That's
can
fine.
still get through it, but we're not getting anything major away. But let's move into, first I want to know why Natchez? Like, how did you come to Natchez?
Thank you. That's a great question. No one's ever asked me that. So the truth is that there was a scholar by the name of W.K. Caleb McDaniel. He is a professor at Rice University, and he's also a Pulitzer Prize winner. He wrote a book on Henrietta Wood, who was an enslaved woman that was manumitted and then captured again and brought back into slavery. And when emancipation happened, she sued her captors and won the highest known form of restitution in United States courts. And when he was writing about, where enslaved people were being sold, I think she was being sold at the time, it was called Forks of the Road Slave Market. It was the second largest slave market to New Orleans. And it was in Natchez. And he described this wealthy place, this wealthy town, the wealthy elite, like, just like the intersection with the Mississippi River, right, was right there, and what was coming in and was going out. And I said, okay, I want to start in Natchez. I'm not going to start in New Orleans because New Orleans at the time I wasn't ready. New Orleans is so monumental in the cultural imagination that I was like, you know what? I'm going to take people someplace else. It's not going to be a New Orleans slave market. Let's go to Natchez instead. And I found out a few things. I felt emotionally that I was on the right track. Like, I think about when I was writing about how Harrison how his friend Ezekiel told him, you're going to have to get back in the fields. I didn't find out. I found out organically through my research. Natchez was ground zero for sharecropping. It happened arguably there. I also found out when I was researching Spencer Ambrose's character, and I thought, he's a spoiled rich kid. Where would he be educated? Natchez elite sent their kids to Princeton. I was educated there. So it was this type of full circle, these concentric moments in terms of time and space that made me realize, like, this is the place to start.
Yeah. And then you take us on this, you traverse us through, like, I mean, I learned a lot because you took us to Kansas.
Yeah. And because that's where they went. Because there is a group of African Americans, and I'm going to shout out this historian, a scholar, her name is Nell Painter, because she wrote a book about it. They were called exodusters. They migrated from the South to places in the Midwest like Kansas and Nicodemus. Yeah, it was one of those all black towns still standing.
Yeah. And so I think that was a part that I wasn't expecting us to go there, because when you think about people migrating, I think the thing we're told, people migrated from the South to the North.
Neither was
to Chicago.
I didn't think it was going to end up there. Neither was I. But then I thought to myself, think about the route, the Mississippi. Think about the boats where they would have gone.
Yeah.
And think about the time period was before 1912 was a part of the Great Migration. And so I knew those routes already. So I was like, I wanted to give myself a little bit of a challenge. Where else would they have gone? And also I thought to myself, I live in New York, and it's very hard not to think like New York is the center of the world. Take them someplace far out.
Yeah.
Because if I've gotten you this far along in a story where you already read through Natchez, you already read through Shreveport, and now we get to Kansas, if I take you far out, you might be willing to trust me.
Yes.
You don't have a reference point. Not for everyone, because there might be Kansas readers out there.
Someone
but for a lot of the people, but yeah, right. A lot of people, I'm not going to say all, but a good portion of people, they've never been there. I've never been there. I've never met large black communities from there. So I was like, I'm being taken along for a ride too.
Yeah, that's awesome. Celestia Yours said Kansas isn't talked about enough in books, and her family is a part of that.
Yeah, and I just thought it's cool. Like, I'm taking you to Nicodemus. I'm taking you to this black town. I'm taking you to what everybody's black. Everybody, like. Yeah.
And so let's talk about how Tirza gets there. Something tragic happens.
Yes.
But Tirza, she finds love again. So we'll say her and Harrison did not get back together.
Right.
I'm going to say that. Sorry, guys. And so she finds, but I want to talk about the harm and the things that were done to her at the hands of Spencer, and it talks about, like, what characters, because there's so many characters that have so much meaning throughout this book.
Right. So Tirza was able to make it to Kansas because she had to. She could
Yeah.
not stay in Shreveport. Spencer Ambrose was his master's son. So excuse me, the son of a really wealthy man. So he was, and by inheritance, Tirza was his property.
Yeah.
And he was, trigger warning, he abused and sexually assaulted her many times throughout her life. And
Mm-hmm.
he always felt like, even after emancipation, that he had ownership over her.
Yes.
And so one of the bigger conflicts in the book was that she became the source of affection for the most charismatic
Yeah.
preacher in Shreveport. His name was Isaac. And Isaac is not only charismatic, he's very progressive at that time. He
Mm-hmm.
believes that black people or black men should have the right to vote. And you don't talk about stuff like that at that
Yeah.
time, because I found out historically that Shreveport was, when I wrote that Shreveport was labeled bloody cattle, as in a cattle parish, that was actually
Mm.
real. There was so much violence happening in Shreveport at that time that the coroner left town because that's how much carnage there was. So, you know, what ended up happening, and I'm going to spoil it because I can't, what ends up happening is that Isaac gets lynched.
Yeah.
And he gets lynched, and Tirza finds out because, unfortunately, at the time, black people's
It broke my
bodies were
heart.
kept as keepsakes, and Spencer kept his
Yeah.
souvenirs.
Yes.
And one of his souvenirs was part of Isaac's
Yeah.
body, and she sees it, and she ends up killing him. And the way she kills him is she shoots him. She shoots him, and because it's also because Isaac once taught her how to shoot to
Yeah.
defend herself.
The vendor stuff, because
And
I think he knew, right? It was
he
gonna
knew,
come a
because
time.
I hope that people caught it, but he knew that, not because when she's hiding from Spencer one day, and Isaac finds her, she says to him, like, you don't know what it's like. You don't know what trigger warning rape is like. You don't
Yeah.
know that feeling. And I do know that feeling. They're both victims of sexual assault. And
Mm-hmm.
he was like, I'm going to teach you how to shoot a gun. I'm going to
Yeah.
teach you. So when Isaac dies, now she's had two loves taken from her. Yeah,
Correct. Yes.
she had two loves taken from her. He sits down, and he tries to taunt her again with, like, he had to do what he had to do, and she just blows his head off. And
Yeah.
that was
That was the best
exciting for me
part.
to write, because I said to myself, you have to write it so quickly as how a bullet travels.
Yes.
You have to write it so quickly that when someone reads it, they're like, what?
And
What
that's
just happened?
exactly what I did. I was like, wait a minute. And I
That's
go and I
exactly how
went
I
back.
wanted.
But it's also how you dropped us off, just how you dropped us off, letting us know what happened to Isaac.
Oh yeah, like, because you want to know, and it was hard to write that. It was hard, but I tell myself that I had to write about violence in Zeal, but also violence was normal.
Yeah.
That was normal. That
Yeah.
there was nothing spectacular about
Right.
that. And I wanted, and the reason why I wrote it, like, oh, he just has his body in a jar on a mantelpiece.
Yeah.
That's what
Yeah.
happened.
Yeah.
That is what they did. And
Yeah.
so she was used to seeing other body parts because she had to clean around the mantelpiece, and she learned how to dissociate in that sense,
Yeah.
because you don't have time to grieve. You don't. She's a first lady of church. Besides the homegoing service, before or after work, she don't have any other time to grieve. You
Yeah.
can't do that. And so I think that I had to write it that way. And I remember I have a friend of mine, I was in conversation with her, and she's a white woman. And she said to me, she was like, did I make that up? And I said, yes, but that also, no, she didn't mean it
Oh, yes. Okay.
no,
Yeah. Okay.
no, she didn't mean it that way. But she was like, did you make that up? And I said, that all happened.
Yeah.
That all happened.
Yeah.
So yes, I imagined it, and I used sort of literary devices
Mm-hmm.
to bring the reader to that point. But that type of brutality, that happened.
And I think in this moment, not that we hadn't seen her strength before, but this is where she really, life turns for her, right? And
Yes.
with her son,
Mm-hmm.
and it's escaping me right now. I should have had it in front of me. The young lady who goes
Oh,
with
oh,
them.
oh, novella.
Novella, yes. Novella, and then they all go to Kansas, right?
Yeah.
But then let's talk about the other main character,
Which one?
Harrison's daughter.
Miriam. So
Very.
Miriam, Miriam, I love her because she's one of those people where you might think spiritually, if something's not right, it ain't never gonna be right, and it's gonna
Yeah.
show up in other people's dynamics. It's gonna show up in your children. It's gonna show up in the way that they carry relations, and she is the product of that. She knows, as the only child and a child that's a little bit more introverted, that something is uneven in her life.
Mm-hmm.
Her mother and her father are not on the same page. She doesn't know
Yeah.
what it is,
Why? Yeah.
and
Why they're not on the
why
same?
they're not.
Yes.
Why it's
There's a
like
reason.
her mother looks to Harrison as the Northern Star,
Yes.
and Harrison always looks elsewhere, figuratively. And she's like, why aren't they ever in sync with each other?
Mm-hmm.
She knows they love her, but because she doesn't observe a healthy love between them two, she always feels like something's off. And so Miriam, she was what they call a water child. She was a cancer. She, she's has these like she has this regurgitation sometimes, like they try to dry her out, like she's
Mm-hmm.
very, very attuned to water. And we meet her around the time where everybody's hearing a rumor that there's a big flood coming. Well, they
Yeah.
live along the Mississippi River. Big whoop. Harrison and Tabitha, his wife, are like, I mean, what is the big deal? It's matter. Well, to make a long story short, the flood comes,
Yeah.
and the only one that survives is Miriam. And Miriam also makes her way to Kansas because people from Mississippi as well were making their way
Yeah.
up there, and there were ways to get Black people out, and she made her way that way.
Yeah. I just love how you brought her into the fold with Tirza, right?
Yeah,
And there was a draw there. They knew that there was
yeah.
something.
Tirsa looked in her face and was
Yeah.
like, "I
Yeah.
know you.
Yeah.
I know you."
Yeah.
And what's been great is that I was worried that there were going to be people that read certain full circle moments and think maybe I'll massage the plot a bit to make it easier to bring them to that, not them
Mm-hmm.
organically happening. But it's like sometimes Black life has these moments where you're like, if I explain it to you, you might think that it's fate or it's a coincidence or something like
Yeah.
that, or it's just we are the technology in our bodies, we know them
Yes.
and we recognize them in other people. And
Mm-hmm.
so when Tirza sees her at an event that she's working, she's like, I know you. I know I see the man I love in your eyes. I
Yes.
see him. So who are you exactly? And they lie to each other. Tirza has to fake her identity, her name, because she killed someone.
Correct.
Miriam fakes her name because she doesn't have parents anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So she doesn't feel like she has any origin. So for years they're circling around each other, and there's children in the mix, and they're just aging, and they don't know how deep their bond
It
is
is. Yeah.
until literally Tirza's on her deathbed.
Yeah. That's when, yeah, on her
Yeah,
deathbed. Let's talk about the letters, because I feel like that was such an intimate part of this story.
yeah,
Um, a catalyst for many things,
yeah.
right? So talk a little bit about the love letters that Harrison wrote.
I mean, so so she grew up in the house, so she has a literacy that
Mm-hmm.
was sort of instilled in her that Harrison didn't because he worked outside. She also spoke differently than them. You notice the dialect and the dialogue. She speaks
Mm-hmm.
differently. So when she finds out that she's free, excuse me, she's ready to go to the nearest railroad and go to Mississippi and
Yes.
find her way to Natchez when she gets there. But the Union armies tore those tracks up, and she goes to Isaac at church house, and he tells her, you got a gift that many other people don't have. You can read and write. Go to the post office. Go write them. You
Mm-hmm.
know, you may not be able to get to him, but you can write them. And that's she does. She writes him all the time. But as the years go on, only a certain number of letters survived. And they sometimes survive because, you know, they survived they survived in her Bible. She kept them in her Bible. They survived in bulletins. They survived because of someone picking them up at an estate sale. Shit
Yeah.
like that. And so I had to learn the beginning because I didn't have the letter as the anchor point in the beginning. I just was writing. And my
Okay.
editor was like, you have to have something like some type of arc, some scaffolding that readers can go back to as you're taking them to so many different places. And it's the letter. It is the communication that she's having, and to see how it gets exchanged, how they get protected, how they're in danger of being lost forever, and how
Yeah.
they get passed on.
And I think your editor, right, like saying the arc, because the arc is Ardelia and Oliver, and he gives her the letter.
Yeah.
So can you talk about that? Because I just, there's so many parts. Now I'm just thinking back all over again. There's so many parts of this book that
Yeah. So Oliver is a doctor
mm-hmm.
at one of the city's biggest hospitals, and he meets this woman named Miss Lunette. And Miss Lunette has a problem in her respiratory system, but when they give her tests, it's showing she's fine, and she's not fine. This is before COVID. We knew COVID was coming to the city.
Correct.
And she tells Oliver all of her life, how she was in parts of West Africa and Vegas and Harlem, and kids, and Oliver in turn tells her about his life. And when he's telling her about his girlfriend, who was a history nerd, she was to Schomburg, about their life, and about what he told her about, like, how he got engaged and the kids, Miss Lunette has a moment, and she's like, "I need to stay alive. I need you to see something." And he's like, "What?" Because she's older.
Mm-hmm.
"I need you to see something." And she eventually dies, unfortunately, and he leaves Ardelia because of the separation, in terms of not passing on the illness. He was so traumatized by that, he
Mm-hmm.
left. Well, Ardelia is doing family history because her father unexpectedly dies from COVID.
Yeah.
And she learns things about her father she didn't know, that he was a painter,
Yeah.
that he wasn't a veteran. She didn't know this because they had such an estranged relationship. And she learns in his death, like, oh, I learned these things about my family. Who was this person? Who were the subjects of these paintings? Why won't my grandmother talk to me about certain
Yeah.
things?
Yeah.
And it is through those moments that, when they finally reunite at the end, they reunite because one of Miss Lunette's friends emails Oliver and also gets in touch with Ardelia and says, I want you to I want you to come to her, basically, like, just her home, and see all these different things, and they're going to put it up as a museum because she was such a staple in the community.
Mm-hmm.
And it is in that moment where they go, where Oliver sees, like, he sees a letter, and he sees a letter, another correspondence from Tirza, that he gave to Ardelia at his engagement party.
Yeah.
It was in Miss Lunette's hands because she was at an estate sale in Kansas and grabbed it.
Yeah.
So that was the missing part. Like, this woman more than once, and it matched up with what Ardelia was always already doing in her genealogical history.
Yeah. And even when you talked about her dad and who was he painting?
Yeah, because she was like, I do visual arts, and there was something about these subjects
Mm-hmm.
that feels so intimate and so haunting, that they're just not random people. How
Mm-hmm.
am I gonna how do I work backwards?
Yeah. So were there, as you're writing, was there someone in a character that ended up being more important to you, or one that surprised you as you were writing them?
I think Corinthian kind of like, Corinthian was Miriam's husband.
Mm-hmm.
And he surprised me because I just thought
Yeah.
of like a big old teddy bear. Like,
Uh-huh.
I thought of little Rel before he lost the weight. That's
Yeah.
what I thought of, like a big teddy bear. When you come home, he's gonna be there. He's gonna be, when he gets home off of work, he's gonna be, you're not gonna worry. He's here,
Yes.
like, he's there. And I think when Tirza died, she left such a hole in the community
Mm-hmm.
that it was like, yeah, she's not here anymore. I'm about to go. And
Yeah.
so when he has a confrontation with Miriam, like, listen, you can either run up behind
Free.
free, or you can leave,
Yes.
but we're going. And he was making, and as she's out doing God knows what, he's making all these plans to sell things, to
Yes.
prepare. And I think that was a time where I was like, I want to make sure that every character has their moment.
Mm-hmm.
And if it wasn't for Corinthians saying, you got until this time, I don't want to hear no back and forth, she would not have moved with haste to give that letter to Novella, to
Yeah.
give it to her and say, hold on to this. I don't care. Like, forget about what happened between me and you. I need you to hold on to this because we both love Tirza. This is the only thing we have her left.
Yeah.
So I like him.
I did too. I mean, I like everyone except for Spencer. I mean, I can recognize what
Oh
Spencer,
yeah,
what that
yeah.
part.
A lot of people. Like I remember a lot of women I spoke to, not a lot, but a few women I spoke to. They had an issue with Free, and I get it. Free was a philanderer. He was a gambler.
Yeah.
He was terrible with money.
Yes.
He was probably an absentee father.
Yes.
But also, this is a man
But he has so
who
much
lived.
trauma.
This is a man who literally saw his father lynched
Yes.
in front of him,
Yes.
and unlike his mother, he could never recover from that grief. He never recovered. He
No.
never recovered.
And I think I
And
understood that. I mean, I think as I was reading, although he had all these different things, being the gambling, I understood that trauma stayed with him for his life.
he
He couldn't get
never
past
recovered.
that.
And
No.
that's why when she meets him in the jailhouse, because he got a lot of
Yeah.
debt, one of my favorite lines was she was like, you could have came to me. And he said, no, because you had this image of who I was in my head. I was the golden child. I'm
Yeah.
not breaking that. And then she says to him, well, there was another option. He says, mockingly, what, a preacher? Like, we already know how that,
You know how that
like,
ends up.
and so
Yeah.
it's like, so Free, he never recovered. He had one one parent that died in front of him, and another parent died without him.
Yeah.
He was seconds too late.
Seconds to.
So grief does so
Yeah. And he's
I
someone that
love
I've
grief.
thought about after, you think about characters after, like, how did he, and, like, what's his story? What,
He was probably the type of man who grew up with, he got really old and had those gray rings around his eyes,
Yeah.
and it's a bit melancholy,
Mm-hmm.
but he knew in the book, like, he started to wonder, like, who, he learned once they moved to Nicodemus his mother's hiding a lot.
Yes.
He sees the bulletin that Harrison wrote towards her. And he's like, who is this man? I thought my dad was the only one. Da, da, da. And it took his wife saying, now we about to get up out here. I'm going to tell you the real truth. If your mother did not love your father, she would have shot that man's head off. That's how much she loves him. So now
Yes.
we can put this to bed. You can rest
Yes.
off that. You can heal. You can have the answers for that. Your
That
mother
alone
loved your
lets you know
father.
that she loved your father.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like she loved your father. She killed for that man.
Yeah. There's a lot about, of course, we talked about legacy and what you inherit from the people before us, right? Did writing this make you think differently about your own family history?
If they did think differently about me, like
Yeah.
Ardelia, a lot. There were some people that said like, "Oh, the modern part can be repetitious." That's what anxiety does. I am a woman that is healing an anxiety attachment. Anxiety is like if you're on the elliptical and you're pedaling really quickly and you suddenly take your feet off and the pedal's still
Mm-hmm.
going. That's what anxiety does. It is repetitive. It can
Yeah.
get you stuck in certain narratives to protect you, even though that may not be the truth. The emotional truth is you're trying to have control because you're scared. And I want anxiety to feel visceral in the body. I want
Mm-hmm.
it to feel that way. So when I wrote about Ardelia and the spinning that she was doing, I had to think about the spinning that I have done in the past. And what I realized is I am happy that we have two individuals that take responsibility for the way that anxiety or insecurity shows up. However, we have seen in hundreds of pages that this fear of abandonment did not begin with them. That
Mm-hmm.
began with their ancestors not
Yeah.
reuniting. And sometimes we as Black people, especially, it is important to realize that sometimes the fears that's in our genome, sometimes those anxieties, someone's going to leave.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes that obsession to cling to some sort of stability, that was imprinted on us way before we even thought of,
Yeah.
way before we were in the womb.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
hope that people caught on to that.
Yeah. It's a phenomenal book. I mean, it's an instant classic.
Thank
It
thank
is
you.
amazing.
Thank you
It's
so
what
much.
I remember when I finished it and I said, this is why I love historical fiction. This book.
And you know what? And even when I read it, it's one of those books where, I was afraid my book was going to get canceled. I was like, I can't hit the note. I can't strike the landing. And I am really proud of what I did because it's a lovely
It
book.
is.
There's so many lines in there that I remember, and I'm like you wrote that, and you wrote that because you know, I was in conversation with Jacqueline Woodson, who I
Mm-hmm.
love, and she said to me, as a literary, you know, elder, that she said, you could tell how much you love Black people in this
Yes,
book. And that's what
absolutely.
I wanted to know, because I started my career off very much talking about whiteness, talking about my problems fitting into white paradigms as a
Mm-hmm.
girl growing up in suburbia. But now it feels like I'm writing, like somebody said, this is a grown woman's book. Zeal is a grown woman's book. And the love I have for myself and the love I have for the people that surround me, all of that was transmuted into those lines.
I mean, but you can see, like you say, the arc. You can see the arc from your first book to this book, though.
But that's what I hope. I
Yes.
hope that people see that every single book that I write is a dialogue with each other. It is a body of work. It has different extensions,
Yes.
but they're all circulatory. They're
Yes.
all transporting something. And so I
Yeah.
hope that people can see. But I think the great thing about being in the space that I'm in is that I have the space to evolve. So when people to ask me about my publisher Harper, who I've been with since the beginning of my career, there was an immense gratitude in the fact that I could not write this book 7 years ago, but I was given the opportunity for book 2 and book 3 and now this book to be able to deliver it.
Yes. And you can see that. I mean, just from, I think back to this was my undoing, nonfiction, but just the whole trajectory
Mm-hmm.
of the books that you've given us, and they're all
Thank
connected. They're
yeah. Yeah, and
all connected.
it's just a curiosity. I love history, and it's just like, because I was living in a time we were so separated, we
Mm-hmm.
were so disconnected. I wanted to write a book where we were connected on a grand scale. That's what I wanted.
And you keep talking about writing this book in COVID. I wonder if it would be the same book if it wasn't written during COVID times. You know what I
No,
mean? Because,
no, it wouldn't have been. It
because
wouldn't
you
have been
get this
because
sense of yearning to be within community and be with people because we weren't in that time, right?
right, like
And that comes
I mean,
through. It
yeah.
comes through very heavy.
No, I think that I you know, I always say, as a novel evolves, so too do you
Mm-hmm.
evolve. And 4 years may not be a lot of time in what's the word I'm looking for, in literary spaces, because some books take a decade to
Yeah.
write. But I've grown so much in those 4 years. You know, I'm 33 now. In 4 years, I was going through my Saturn return.
Yeah.
You know, I was going through a lot of upheavals of personally.
Yes.
I was sitting on a lot of Black ladies' couches,
Yes.
figuratively, in therapy. And so there were things that I had to learn personally, and that was helpful for me to say, this is your book. You have to write it fearlessly. Like, you have to do it. You have to unharness whatever it is that's holding you back.
Yeah. I can wholeheartedly say I'm going to be 57 this year, and I have read every one of your books, and I can say it has been a beautiful thing to watch.
Thank
Just the
you.
growth, and just everything that has come from the first book to this book. It has just been. I can't wait to see what's next.
Thank you. No, that means a lot, because it's just like, I'm a type A person. I'm healing my
Yeah.
perfectionism, and you're always wondering, like, did I peak with that? But then I thought to myself, a friend of mine told me, they were like, not comparing me, but they were like, when Prince finished Purple Rain, he kept
Yeah.
producing. When Stevie Wonder finished Songs in the Key of Life, he kept producing. And I said to
Yes.
myself, I'm going to write until I transition, because I can't think of where else to put certain inspiration. But I can always say, when it comes to Zeal, I did that.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going to come after, but I did that.
So because I'm going to let you go, but because I have spoken to you before, I know what's coming next. I want you to tell the audience what's coming next, because no sooner than you told me on Spines and Vines what was coming next, lo and behold, there's a news article, or there's a news cast talking about the exact same thing.
Was it Maroons?
Uh, yeah, I
So
think it was
so
in,
so it
yes,
is
tell
going to
them.
be another novel,
Yes.
and I am trying to figure out how to write, again, environmentally,
Mm-hmm.
about a place that I realize is sinking, like literally sinking, and the history of the people that work there, the vulnerability they have to the Mississippi River, and also the history of the land on which they stand was from Maroons, people that sought refuge in the swamps. And I want to tell this particular story through the eyes of a teenage girl, of a teenage Black girl. One of my friends who's from Louisiana once said to me, all floods have different personalities. And when she said that, I thought away, like, we think of water could be a spirit, it could be an ancestral spirit, it can move. And I said, there you go. And as soon as I thought of that, I was like, I'm going to play around with it, because I am in a state of play that I wasn't in with my other books. There was a pressure to get the first idea right at the right time and just follow through with it. But now I'm like, take your time. You don't need to write every single day. It may come to you another day. You might only write 500 words. That's okay. Steady along. Because I still have to learn that language that I'm so jealous I don't have. I had to learn, like, marshes and certain things, certain woods and all of that I could just talk to someone from Louisiana and they straight up say it. And I don't have that. So it's almost like I feel like a child a bit. And I'm learning to use my senses more, even as I sit on the couch. And I'm like, okay, let me try this part again,
That's
and
great.
rework it.
Lastly, what do you want readers to take away from Zeal? And there's so much.
I want readers to take away that, like, we are a miraculous people. Like, no, we might not be able to understand the choices, but their choices were made. And because the choices were made, we live and exist today. I want people to understand that love is the deepest connection we have to humanity. It just is. Because, they could take away our names, they could take away our bodies, they could take away our hair, they could take away so many things, but they cannot govern the vicissitudes of affection, the vicissitudes of desire. Nobody can govern that.
Yeah.
And I want Black people to know that, like, that you were loved, and there were people that loved before you, and there are people going to love after you because of what you do.
Yes.
And so I hope that people, when they read Zeal, they see it as, yes, it's a limited book. It has, contours with spines and all of that. But I also want people to see it as like a living, breathing document that their family also went through extraordinary things, and that perhaps that this book will inspire them to do some digging about what their family had done.
Yes, I absolutely loved it, and I have been recommending it to everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us, you guys. If you don't
Thank
have
you.
it, make sure you get a copy of Zeal. Have a wonderful rest of your Sunday, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Take
Take
care.
care. Bye.
Bye-bye.